Hello, my name is Taya Graham, and welcome to the Police Accountability Report. As you know, the point of the show is to hold police accountable. To do so, we often talk about police misdeeds and misconduct, but we also try to connect this behavior to the political system which supports it. That's the critical connection that is often missed. Police have extraordinary power because the people we elect and the economic system which supports them are complicit. I'm joined today by my reporting partner, Stephen Janis. Stephen, this is something we call the political economy of policing, correct?
Yeah, I think it's difficult and also kind of problematic to keep just looking at policing without considering the political structure and the politicians we elect. Right. And the way, the system is bolstered by, political powers that, make decisions that police couldn't do what they do unless the people that we elect, the elected officials, the money they receive from things like police unions, didn't fuel the underlying imperative. If that doesn't exist, then a lot of these problems would, I think, be easier to solve. And if we don't direct it at the political power structure and the people we elect, then we're really remiss and we're not being fair.
Today, we're going to expand this discussion with a first for our show, where we are joined by an actual police officer. Trevor Hewick is a retired detective of the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department and a veteran of 22 years on the police force. A man who not only has an impressive resume in law enforcement, but is willing to call out cops who behave badly, and more importantly, offer solutions on how we can fix our country's troubled law enforcement industrial complex. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, good morning. I served 22 years with the Washington Metropolitan Police Department, proud to serve with them. I was very active in the community, very active in the union, labor rights, so I was involved in politics, associated
right.
with the government, which is very important.
Yeah.
I want to start with a story that you are intimately involved with and which we have followed quite closely, and it's the death of Anton Black in police custody. Black was a 19-year-old aspiring model and track star who was chased by police in Greensboro, Maryland in September of 2018. The police responded after a white woman called police accusing him of kidnapping his 12-year-old cousin. Those allegations turned out not to be true, but after police chased him to his mother's house, they took Anton to the ground and he died. The state medical examiner's office deemed his death an accident, but as you can see by the body camera video we are watching right now, one of the officers puts his entire weight on Anton, who himself weighed just 160 pounds. Medical experts we consulted said that this caused what's known as positional asphyxiation, which is what caused his death. So, Trevor, first I want to ask, you're working with a family. Can you give us an update on their journey to try to get justice for Anton?
Oh, it's been a hard journey. It's sad. It's sad because I believe in the system. I believe the system does work. This one here is flawed. I go back to constitutional policing.
Yes.
I believe in policies, standards, training, supervision. None of that was done in this case. If you live by constitutional policing, you won't have violations like Anton Black, and now the family has to suffer through this, all because the system has let them down. And it's more than just the police department letting them down, but the state's attorney's office in Caroline County has let them down as well, and it's disgusting. That hurts. Yes. The death hurts, don't get me wrong. The death hurts the family, yes. But how the family has been put through the system by the police, even Maryland State Police, who I had a lot of faith in. But the state attorney's office is demoralizing, depressing, demeaning, and they can't get over that. Yeah. We are having a vigil on the year anniversary, the 15th of September in Greensboro. So it hurts them because how the system has let them down.
How has the system let them down? Like what specifically, strikes you as a person who's experienced law enforcement? What really struck you and said, this is just not right? Where
did it break down?
Violating policy, lack of training, lack of supervision. But the cover-up is what stinks more. Mm-hmm. That's what had the cover-up, and I don't know who started this cover-up, but believe me, if it takes civil action to get it, we will find out who was part of this cover-up.
What's been covered up then from your perspective?
I can tell you that the state attorney's office, Mr. Riley, upon request from Mr. Maloney, showed us footage of a body-worn camera from Officer Webster of
Right.
that incident.
Right.
And the footage we saw was in black and white. It was blurred. It was blacked out. There was
was
lack of
redacted?
volume. It's not redacted. This is an edited version,
So you're
an
saying-
altered version.
Just so
Not,
people are clear, that you're saying the version that you were initially shown is different from the version that was released to the public, just so I understand.
the version we were shown on September 24th by State Attorney Riley, of 2018, is not the same version that was released January 24th, 2019. That one was clear. It was in color.
Right.
There weren't any words missing, blur spots. There weren't any blackout spots.
Right.
And yet, State Attorney Riley says, well, we may have been mistaken. I'm going to tell you, that's a sad excuse. He knows what he did. There's two versions out there, that black and white altered version, and then the version that was shown to the public. And he's going to answer to that. So that aspect of the corruption is bad. And there's going to be a price to be paid for that, because it affects the family, it affects the trust that the community has in the police. And how do you recover from that? I don't know if you do. I don't even know if you put people in jail if you recover from that, because you've lost the trust of the community when you do things like that to justify a wrongful death in police custody to come out.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, I've always wondered, there's a pivotal moment in the video, which we'll show right now, when Officer Webster arrives on the scene and Anton's in the car, and he makes the decision to break the window and then tase him, which seems to really precipitate the whole, it does not de-escalation. Is that a moment of training that you think about, like where he could have handled this differently, or where, because that seems to be the pivotal moment. Once he does it, Anton seems to panic, and then they grab him. What moments in that continuum of events would you, from your training, do you say that they should have had different kinds of training and maybe responded differently?
I've got a big problem with that. You know, he has every duty to de-escalate this situation. He also doesn't have to stand down, but there's different ways he could have dealt with this. Anton's not going anyplace.
Right.
He's in a car.
And boxed in as well.
And where is he going? What struck me so strange is that there was no communication, no orders from Officer Webster to dictate what Anton Black should do.
I'm tasing him. Taser, taser, taser.
That's such a good
He doesn't
point.
communicate with
wasn't
him
given
at all.
any instruction.
That's a good point.
Not at all.
He could have said, you know, get out of the car or anything, right?
He could have said, I would have said, you know, sit up, put your hands up, let's talk this over, let's figure out what's going on, you're not in trouble, let's talk him down while the other officers get around, because he's not going to go anyplace. So give yourself some time to set this up and talk to the young man. I'm not sure if Officer Webster knew he was in front of his house.
Okay.
But bottom line, he was in a car, and I would have stepped back, talked him down, let other officers come, figure out what's going on, just to ease his mind. But instead, the first thing you see, he approaches the car without any commands, mind you. And in the first 3 seconds, it's boom, boom, and he smashes out the window. And in the next 2-3 seconds, he goes for his taser. I said, what do you... And Chief Manos is next to him saying, tase him, tase him? And believe me, the video I saw, the black and white, blurred out, cut out the language, saw none of that. Saw none of that.
Wow.
So I want to know where that, anyway, I want to know where that altered version is. So next thing you know, he's tasing him. So all in a matter of 6 seconds, he's tasering him. And he tased him. And then he runs out, and then you have the confrontation. So I have problems with the initial confrontation, because then you wouldn't have had the struggle that you did have. If he would have given him time to talk, Manos could have been on the other side. The other officer would have showed up.
And his mother probably would have come out at that point and maybe
And
explained.
mother might have been able to help.
The mother and the stepfather did come out. But if you would have given them a few more seconds, a few more questions, if you had talked to them, then the mother would have come out and explained himself. Anton,
Yes.
listen, that's not how we train our police officers.
Okay.
It is not. It's against policy.
Okay, that's good to know.
It's not constitutional policing. You know, Officer Webster even himself says he's schizophrenic. So now we think, okay, he might have a mental health condition.
Right.
He says
And
it's
so-
about
He says
Anton.
that-
He says it's
Oh,
about.
I'm
he's-
sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, just so people know, he said you can hear him on the body cam footage saying, "I think he's schizophrenic" or something
Right.
about Anton. But that's right. That
Right,
raises
so
another
if it's a
question.
mental health issue,
It should be
why
handled
would
differently.
you, shouldn't it have absolutely been handled
You shouldn't
differently?
escalate it.
Exactly, because Caroline County themselves, they take pride. They've been awarded 80% of their officers have been trained in critical incident training. So they have that. And the sheriff's very proud of that. I don't think Officer Webster had any of that, or Chief Manos. But the whole idea is, if you think he's got a mental health issue, you know, we are trained to handle them differently.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question, and this, you know, when you worked in a metropolitan police where there's tons of crime, but I look at like Greensboro, there's almost no crime, right? Are these officers just looking for something to do? I mean, it
That's
just
an
kind of
interesting
seems like,
question.
oh, let's chase somebody because all we do all day is like, you
Sit
know,
in our cars and
sit in
write
our
speeding
cars
tickets.
and write speeding tickets. And you know, Greensboro had like 40 incidents in 1 year, and you got 4 police officers. It almost seemed like they were looking for action in some ways, and they didn't want to escalate it. This is what I'm just curious.
My dealing with these small town police officers, especially, you know, 4 and 5, you don't need them because that's just right.
Wow.
You know, they want action. They want the action. They want the thrill. They want the high.
Yes.
They don't have the training and the experience to deal with that action, so they'll overreact. And just to have something to talk about at night and not realizing their actions. So I'd be getting rid of most of these small-time police departments. If you're 4 or 5, you don't need them. You know what? It's a burden on the city. Why does the community need that burden on the city when they can be taking that money? I think their budget's like $400,000. You know, help offset the water bills, set up community centers for the kids. You guys have been to Greensboro. There's nothing to do there for the children.
No.
Wow.
There's no program.
There's no crime either.
There's no crime.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, because of this officer's actions and his chief's actions and their council's actions, they're going to be bankrupt over all this.
Yeah.
The next case we want to talk about is this video of Maryland's Montgomery County Police making a very controversial arrest, which Trevor is investigating on behalf of the plaintiff. She's suing the police because she said her son was illegally arrested. We're going to show the video captured by her son, and we're going to have Trevor walk us through what happened.
Son, you're coming with me, bruh. Son, they're arresting me for no reason.
Stand back.
Hey, man.
Mom,
Stand back.
stand back.
Stand back. Stand back. I don't touch that.
We're going.
Hey.
What do you gotta do? What do you gotta do? What do you gotta do? Stand back. What are y'all doing?
Listen.
Son, what are you doing?
Give me cups. Give me cups.
No! Don't do that with my son! Don't do that with him! No!
Stop resisting.
Oh my God!
Hey, stop it.
No! Don't put it like that! No! No! Oh my God! Oh my God! Look what he's doing!
So why were the police called in the first place, and what's happening in this video?
Hispanic family, single mother, has 2 sons. One son's an adult, comes in and out of the house anytime he wants. So it's a domestic violence, fighting with the mother, not physical fighting. So she's in fear, she wants him out.
Right.
I get that. Not a problem. The police have come to that house before, specifically for the older son.
Okay.
In this instant, the son had broken into the house, and the police show up, and they arrest the son in the kitchen. I don't have a problem with how they arrested the son.
Okay.
Reasonable amount of use of force,
Okay.
no demeaning language, although the older son was loud. was resisting, but I thought the two officers handled that very respectfully.
Okay.
During this confrontation with the older son getting arrested, the younger son is actually taking a video, in his own house, mind you, taking a video on his cell phone of the arrest of his brother and the actions going on by the police officer. I said, okay, no problem with that. He's in his house, even if he's on the street.
It would be legal.
It would be legal,
Right.
and it's in the policy for Montgomery County Police Department to allow citizens to record police action on public space.
Okay.
So not a problem with that. Whatever transpired, the two officers are taking out the older son, walking to the hallway. It's tight. And next thing I know, the young brother is being jostled, hits the ground. They're they're now on top of him. He's screaming.
Yes.
They're threatening to charge him. And I'm wondering, how is this playing out this way? Because you've got to remember, I've read the officer statements. I've heard their audio interview from IAD. So I'm expecting another version of events other than what I saw in this video.
And what did the officer say
Yeah.
happened?
And what did internal affairs say?
And they're not all on the same line. I don't expect them to be on the same line. But in totality, their version is the younger brother was using profanity at the officers, that he was moving in between the living room and the hallway, jumping up on the couch, just being very loud and using profane language. And then he assaults an officer, the old, I push you. Oh, that's an assault. Okay, well, why didn't you lock him up if he assaulted you? Then the second officer comes, and the second officer has to bring him down off the sofa. And the two officers say, oh, well, we'll bring him off the sofa. He fell down onto the living room floor and chipped his tooth. So now they're saying, well, we're going to charge you with simple assault because you assaulted the first officer, and now you assaulted the officer that initially responded. So I'm expecting to see that.
Right.
I see nothing like that, and I hear nothing like that.
Right.
And
I didn't hear any profanity in the video. You can hear the mother's desperation, but you certainly don't hear the young man using profanity. And you can hear him clearly when he talks. He said, Mom, they chipped my tooth. You can hear him when he's talking. But just out of curiosity, cursing at a police officer isn't a crime, right?
right,
Okay, just wanted to double check. So that's not an arrestable offense for cursing.
especially in your own home.
Okay, good to know.
So did they ever charge him, or what happened? What was the
Oh,
follow-up?
they charged him. They charged him with an assault on the officers, and obviously it didn't go anyplace.
Right.
But what gets me is that the mother's complaint was filed with the police department, and IAD did an initial investigation. And she said, I've got this video. This didn't happen this way. I've got this video.
Right.
So they decide not to prosecute him. It's almost a year later that they do an internal affairs investigation, and they advise the officers of their rights. So they're represented by their union. But they've never seen the video, so they give these bogus statements where they all somehow come up with the same events.
Oh, so they weren't aware that the video existed when they made their statements.
Oh, no.
Oh.
So they all got caught lying, essentially.
I'd say that. They were caught lying. But,
Wow.
but what hurts is 5 officers are protecting the one officer.
Yes.
The one officer that initiated the contact. So now you've jeopardized 5 officers'
Jeopardize
careers.
Their careers, yes.
Because this one officer couldn't take it anymore. Couldn't just walk out of there and let the younger brother videotape this incident. So you jeopardize the 5 officers for this one officer's actions, and then when Internal Affairs Division gets it, it's the worst interviews I've ever heard. They teach you in training. You don't lead your officers into giving a statement or testimony, because it's testimony.
Right.
It's testimony.
Right.
These two IED officers led every officer in their testimony. And then they justified the officers' actions. And I'm saying, you've seen the video. Why are you doing this? So needless to say, they justify the action. So now you've jeopardized the IED. So now you've hurt the whole community's trust issue. You know, how is the community going to have trust in the police department's IAD if you can't police your own?
Right. That's a great question. I mean, that's what most community members say here in Baltimore. The police can't police themselves.
Well, they can police themselves.
Right.
They choose not to police themselves. And that's where the community needs to come on. That's where Commissioner Harrison has to step up.
So, Stephen, there was some disturbing new information about our own internal affairs department here in Baltimore City. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we had 12 serious cases that the judge had to dismiss because the statute of limitations had expired. These were cases of use of force and brutality. And, of course, it just raised questions. I mean, the Baltimore City Police Department's under a consent decree.
Yes.
And, you know, one would think that they would be extra careful. But instead, people feel like they let the clock run out on purpose, you know. I mean, and I guess that's what I'm asking. I mean, you seem to have confidence that the process can work, but a lot of people say it's just inherently flawed because there's just a conflict. You had 5 officers willing, as you point out, to take the hit for one.
Right.
How are
All
you going to
willing
have
to
a
lie for
functional
one.
system? How do you root that out of policing? How do you give officers the sense that it's their responsibility to tell the truth?
Yes.
That comes from your leadership. That starts with Commissioner Harrison. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
They've kicked 76 cases. You're
Yeah.
just talking about the 12 in front of the judge.
Right, and that's true.
And you know, your Assistant Chief Delgado, I don't care how much she complains, oh, I need help, I need manpower, check your cases, sergeants, officials. I mean, no, that's a cop-out on her part. If she's running the Internal Affairs Division, she needs to stay on top of that. She's got enough manpower. She can make that happen, but she's passing the buck to the higher-ups. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
But you are arguing that it's the personal actor, not the system itself. Isn't there something systemic that should be changed too, or do you think it's really just personal actors?
No, it's just personal actors.
Okay.
Serious. No, serious.
I'm skeptical.
You can make, no, the system works. You have to make the
Not
system
in Baltimore.
work. You can make it work.
Okay.
You can make it, the officers want it to work. Believe me, they're looking for that structure. If you don't have the structure in place, and you're not going to get it from this commissioner, they will never, never buy in to what you want to do with this city. Never. You couldn't give them enough money to do that. You just couldn't.
You know, Trevor, and I hope this isn't actually a personal question, but you seem, even though you're an officer and you're obviously proud of the work that you've done and you believe that the system can work, you're willing to represent families who've dealt with police abuse, brutality, even, police-caused deaths. Why are you willing to help these families, and why are you willing to talk so openly about it?
It's not right. It's not how I was brought up, and there's too many good police officers out there that believe the same thing I believe. It's not with the training that I repeatedly get from these conferences, International Association of Chiefs of Police, PERF. They don't want this. They're setting up policies, they're doing research, and they're trying to make it work. The thing is, the police departments are not adhering because there's no consensus on policy. So the police departments are not adhering to what these associations are telling you, hey, you need to do this. You need to do constitutional policing, set standards, set policies, have training, supervise it properly. They're saying all the right things. The officers want it. So go back to you, it's the leadership. And what happens is the government, meaning the mayor and the council, they don't know. They don't know a thing about policing and the inner workings. But if they attend some of these conferences, they'll learn quick. So I believe the system works. I believe that there are officers that want to see this happen. I don't need a bad officer out there that's going to corrupt other officers into testifying on their behalf and lying to where they would jeopardize their career, their livelihood, and their own little pride. I mean, listen, I've taken up for police officers. Not when it comes to criminal actions like this. You're not going to get me involved. And I'm telling you, the officers don't want that. They don't want that. They want to believe the system works. They want to work within the system. They don't want the corrupt, the bad eggs on the force. They don't.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you, Trevor. I want to thank my guest, Trevor Hewick, for joining me, and my reporting partner, Stephen Janis. My name is Taya Graham, and I want to thank you for joining me at the Real News Network.